You bring up police suicide rates on your website. First, thank you, because that's not something that's talked about very often because it's a real issue. Uh, you're not being afraid of this. What will you do in response of these high numbers? Because it's, you know, you're a police officer, so it's no secret to you the police officers, let's say you're a heating and air guy. You don't go somewhere where it's 70 degrees. You go when it's freezing cold, or you go when it's on fire.
Right.
So as a police officer, you don't go to a location where people are getting along.
That's right.
So when that's your breakfast, that's your lunch, and that's your dinner. So when you do that every day, week after week, month after month, year after year. Hence, police suicides. They're common, and they shouldn't be. What can you? How can you help with that as sheriff?
Well, the first thing you need to do, in my opinion, is you need to know your people.
Mm-hmm.
Become involved in their lives. There was a mark of a good leader, is, as we become involved in whatever career we're in, we kind of look at and try to model ourselves after people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we think that are good people and that know their job and that are good leaders or somebody to emulate. Somebody that I remember is a leader that always knew like the names of your spouses or the names of your kids. They weren't your friend because they were your boss,
Mm-hmm.
but you knew that they were interested in your well-being, your quality of life. That is how I model myself as a leader. I want to become involved in, the welfare of the people that work for me. So you're going to notice that. But you also have your supervisors, train them to be vigilant on the well-being of the people that they're working for. There's certain standards that you expect your people to meet, and that they're not meeting them. There's usually an underlying reason for that. So is discipline necessary, or do you need to call that person in and say, "Hey, I really am concerned about what's your behavior lately or your work product. What's going on with you?"
Or your wife called, and she's concerned.
I mean, that would be an even a more direct way of going about it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So, and then along those lines, have a plan to remedy those problems. Is there a peer assistance team? Is there a employee uh, assistance program,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which so many different agencies have, to where, hey, I'm struggling. I have insomnia. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I have people, I really can't get this last run out of my head. Where am I going to go? Am I afraid to go to my boss because I'm going to be disciplined because of it? I'm going to be suspended because of it. So there needs to be anonymity behind that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we're at the program for them to go to, for anybody to go to, for your dispatchers, for your first responders, for your firefighters who
Mm-hmm.
see some
Yeah.
traumatic things, your EMS personnel who see, death quite a bit, which is very traumatic. And, that peer assistance team that I think we talked about a little bit before
Yeah, we did.
was, is a huge thing where there's anonymity behind it, where you can go talk to somebody without having somebody can't say what he talked to you about.
Right.
And then there's a conduit to resources that the person, the employee, can use to heal, right? And Columbus is huge on that. So I'm coming from a place to where that's not a joke. If you read, I mean, my website has drop down boxes, or you can click on something that will take you to what Columbus is actually doing. The city has a whole program. they actually have a building that you can go to that they just built within the past 5 years or so that's totally anonymous, and you go in a private area where it's and you can get treatment that you need. But even when I was there, you had total free anonymous resources to psychologists and psychiatrists if necessary.
Now, is that only available to Columbus police officers?
No.
Or could an outside agency say, hey, we have someone and we don't have that branch or whatever?
That's a great question. And I'll tell you this about Columbus. They are very, very responsive to outside agencies needing help, whether it's for law enforcement purposes, tactical teams, a helicopter, whatever they need. And this resource is no exception. There's actually full-time police officers that staff this unit. Okay. And we've used it in Somerset already.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, I have direct connections.
Mm-hmm.
This is a long way for Columbus to come down and do something, right? But
right.
No, that's something that they can use. Now, I'm sure there's caveats to that, or there's guidelines to where their resources, as vast as they are, still have its limits. So I really, they kind of stepping outside my scope of knowledge on how they would operate. I just know that Columbus has always been very compassionate about other agencies using their resources, because they realize that, hey, we have deep pockets here, and we have a lot of great resources that other villages and cities can use. So yeah, but the knowledge that I've learned from that, and how they operated and how they treated people with suffering from PTSD or whatever, it set a great example. So I come from a place where I was taught how to do things right, and experienced good, strong leadership when I went through tough times, because we're all human.
Oh yeah.
And I'm, we all think we're indestructible at times, but it catches up with us, and I was not immune to that. So the example that was put forth by my superiors and the people that surrounded me, I mean, it's an experience and knowledge that is, I say it again, is invaluable. And the spillover effect of that is what I can do for people that work with me and for me.
So if the elected sheriff, you could do something like that at a much smaller scale, and if not, then at least you have a connection with being able to contact and knowing who to contact about any given officer that could be dealing with an issue.
There's no doubt about it. And using that model, now there's resources here in Perry County. There's good people here in Perry County that do the same thing. Now, the goal would be then how can we rally around that? How can we
expand it or whatever?
Right. How can we solidify it into a functioning entity that works together for first responders and their families, and start, with first responders, and then as it progresses, as it gets better, as it gets more solidified, have it branch out. And there's so many different people and programs here that would be so beneficial, and it just somebody needs to take lead in it. And I think that the office of the sheriff is that
it's best qualified for that job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Has the ability to lead that,
because
absolutely.
there's no
responsibility.
There's no one village in this county that could man such a difficult task. We're, especially now with everything being strapped and restricted for police officers, and so that would only add stress to the individual officers who are dealing with these issues. When you're showing up to a place and the homeowner is pissed off because it's 50 degrees and they want it 70, you know what I mean?
Right.
To use that for an analogy anyway.
Exactly.